I'm Kirk Harnack. On This Week in Radio Tech, we're talking online help for radio engineers, and we open a Pandora's box of online streaming philosophy with Chris Tarr, Chris Tobin, and me. On This Week in Radio Tech, up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiRT.
Bandwidth for This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is This Week in Radio Tech, episode 122, recorded March 28, 2012. Chewy in the middle. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Telos Systems and the new VX voice-over IP multi-studio talk show system. On the web at telos-systems.com/VX. Hello, it's time for This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack. I'm one of the hosts here at the show. We got two other hosts on today's show who are helping us keep track of things and get the show moving along. And we're talking about radio technology. Now, that just doesn't mean tubes and transmitters. That means everything from, the CD player, the automation system, the stylus on the turntable, if you're still doing that, all the way to the top of the antenna tower, and receiving technology, too. We cover it all, and sometimes we cover a little bit of all of it on the show, and that may be our show on this episode. I want to introduce my partners in crime on this show. From Manhattan, New York, the best-dressed engineer in radio. It's my friend and yours. It's Chris Tobin. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Kirk. Hello, everyone. It's a great day in Manhattan. The weather is warm. It's nice and comfortable, and the spring is upon us. I don't think we even had winter, and except for Kirk, you have the wasp in the house there, so I guess the weather is turning for the best. Bugs are coming out.
Yeah, it has been warm. Although, hey, I heard from my weather buddy, James Spann, who is a meteorologist in the Birmingham television market, and James says, look out, cold weather for the first half of April. Not like winter, but hey, I just heard they had some snow up in the far northeast, like New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, maybe whatever part of Canada is on the other side of there.
This past Monday night here in Manhattan, we had 30-degree weather. It was in the 30s.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And then the next day, we were up in the 50s.
Also on the show, our getaway driver from Mukwonago, Wisconsin. It's Chris Tarr. Hey, Chris.
Hello there. Yeah, we've beautiful weather here, too. It was in the 60s today, so I was very happy about that. I'm the Director of Engineering for Intercom's radio stations in Madison and Milwaukee. I also run the website broadcastengineering.info and am a contributing writer to Radio Guide magazine.
Well, cool. Hey, tell us a little bit about Radio Guide magazine. In our show, oftentimes we talk about topical subjects, and we reference stories that are in Radio World. Their website is rwonline.com. And sometimes we reference articles from Radio Magazine, which is at radiomagonline.com. Both these are just terrific publications. I'm just amazed at, even with a fairly small staff, these folks just keep on top of so much that's going on in our industry. I give them one more plug. For the first 10 years of my engineering career, I would read Radio World from cover to cover, every issue. And felt like I learned a lot about the industry. I felt like I really got up to speed after reading a whole year's worth of these. They come out, twice a month or so. Really felt up to date. So, Chris Tarr, Radio Guide, that's been around for a few years, and I enjoy that magazine. Tell me about Radio Guide.
Sure. Radio Guide's been around several years, and it's a magazine primarily geared towards engineering. It comes out right now every other month. And it features a lot of really good contributors. And like I said, one of the only magazines around really that focuses 99% on the business of broadcast engineering, either contract engineering. They have articles about things like site preparation, FCC compliance, managing broadcast engineering. So it's an excellent magazine. You can check them out online at radio-guide.com. And I generally write the technical articles as it relates to things like computers and very current technology, HD, things like that. So I have an article that appears every issue, and I think this month we're doing an article on backing up your servers. So some practical knowledge there on how to do that.
Is that important?
If you like your job, it probably is.
I'm looking at the this is okay online. They have, I guess, a prior issue of Radio Guide. So I'm looking at that's all. Oh, they haven't updated it. Oh, okay. I saw. Let's try this again. If we can get to if you go to radio-guide.com, right? Do they do much online?
Yeah, you have the January, February 2012 edition.
That would be
2011.
That would be the one that's out now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Mine says 2011. Oh well.
You're on that way back machine.
We'll check on that. Well, Radio Guide also I believe the same publisher also publishes Christian Radio Guide. So that's a same kind of magazine aimed at Christian broadcasters. Hey, what are some other topical resources that we use in our industry? What do you guys turn to? I guess there's radio-info.com, right? Or is it radioinfo.com? Which is it?
It's radio-info, I believe.
Yeah. It looks like they have the no-info website also, but they have the URL, but it points to radio-info.com. Now that's more about programming, though, right?
Right. Now, again, if you go to my site, broadcastengineering.info, that's really, it's 100% geared towards engineering. And we have many, 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 many conversations going on. Something along the lines of 20,000 posts or something.
Wow.
We've been online since 2007. So, yeah. So it's a great site, and it's kind of like an online SBE meeting. We have a lot of smart people that hang out there that give out some free advice and help each other out. And so, yeah. Well, that's Broadcast Engineering Magazine.
Yeah, that was broadcastengineering.com. But if you go to broadcastengineering.info, you'll see the site that Chris Tarr is talking about. Hey, Chris, on your website, broadcastengineering.info, this has a lot of different forums. Like there's one for radio studio engineering and one for TV studio engineering, one for computing in general, internet streaming. There's a whole place about that with 177 posts there. Is it possible can you subscribe to an email that shows you the latest posts of interest, or do you need to go to the site in order to read these?
No. You can do it. We have there's RSS feeds available. You can also subscribe to specific posts. If there's a thread that you really want to follow, you can have it just alert you through email. So there's several ways to do it without having to go. We would love for you to come every day and just kind of surf around, because the other part to that is it may not be something that you're interested in finding out, but there may be somebody there with a question that you may be able to answer. And really the reason we created this was there was really a good place to ask questions a while back, but it was in an remailer type of system where it was all through email. And I got together with a couple of friends of mine who are in the business, and we went, well, you know what? It just doesn't seem like that's a real efficient way, because it's real hard to find an archive of things that may have already been asked or discussed. Somebody posted an email about something, you go, oh yeah, we talked about that last year. So at the time, there's really nowhere to really sit down and just talk about broadcast engineering in a forum. So we created that to kind of take that place. And what's great about it is now, after a couple of years, I think I went on with it in, I want to say 2007, we just have hundreds and hundreds of topics. And, so my hope is it's great if there's something you want to subscribe to and just, kind of keep track of it that way. But also, I'd love for you to subscribe to specific forums and just see what pops up, because one of the things we do best is, we welcome anybody, if you're an engineer or not, and especially people who are maybe interested in it and want to get their questions answered. It's a great place to go and ask that, what people like to say, oh, I've got a stupid question. Well, this is a good place to ask it and really get people who know what they're talking about answer it in a very non-judgmental way. Not kind of, oh, well, you should know that. We know that a lot of the people that come to us may not know anything, and they're just trying to learn. And, we love that. And so that's kind of why we set it up, was not only to exchange ideas between engineers, but also anybody who might be interested could come by as well and learn a little something. So, we have a kind of a long history of helping people out there. So it's fun. It takes up a lot of time to manage, but it's all worth it.
So, Chris, who's the administrator group at broadcastengineering.info?
I'm the administrator.
Okay, well, you should have an email in your inbox with me pleading for permission to be part of your.
Well, what I ended up having to do. We used to have it open where you could register yourself and go on, but then unfortunately these board systems are big spam magnets. So we get a lot of people. We were getting a lot of spammers just signing up and then posting things, and it got to be kind of a hard job to police that. So we went to the approval basis where you sign up and I get an email and I just click a little link and approve you. So we'll certainly get you set up.
Well, maybe during the commercial break you could approve me so I can start spamming your. start participating in your forums.
Well, I'll be looking for. I got my phone out here. I'll be looking for your email.
So in a forum like broadcastengineering.info, do you have certain participants who just seem to really be knowledgeable and really helpful? Is it a bunch of people arguing, bickering back and forth about whether this tube is better than that tube, or this processor or this setting is better than that one? Well, what's the feeling of there? How much help is there?
Well, we got most of the people that are there are extremely helpful. We occasionally, and by the way, I just activated your account.
Oh, thank you.
We get people most of the time are very courteous, very smart, very willing to help. Every once in a while, we get the battle of the smarts going, where there'll be a little scuffle, and I have a group of moderators that kind of step in and kind of play referee. But I think you get that. I think you get that anywhere, and I think it's healthy because it's debate, and sometimes it gets a little heated, but generally, it's very everybody minds their manners, and everybody kind of is respectful of everybody. But we do have a very good core handful of people who post on a regular basis, who are just, I like to call them crazy smart. A guy by the name of Deep Thought, who's a friend of mine. He's a big, very very well known AM engineer out of Chicago who builds AM arrays, specializes in directional arrays and stuff. He's always on there. He's a big AM guy, and often actually offers free advice for people who come by with questions about directional antennas and stuff, and is always there to kind of lend a hand. And Rich Fry, who used to be with Harris, he participates quite a bit. So we've got a real good stable of people, and like I said, I don't think I've ever seen somebody ask something and just get jumped all over for it. And there are some people who come on there. We had a person who came on who was kind of filling in as an engineer who was an IT guy who wanted to do something that was going to be bad. And I looked at the first post and went, oh no. And I was kind of waiting for somebody to kind of just explain that he was being foolish. Yeah. But instead, everybody came on and we were like, well, I see what you're thinking there. And, in a perfect world, yes, that would work. But here's why you don't want to do that. And it turned into a great learning experience. So, we really do, in that community, kind of pride ourselves on helping each other out. And again, that was kind of the charter of it, was there really was no place where people could get together and just ask these kinds of questions. I kind of go back to my days of, when we all had mentors and I could just pick up the phone and call somebody and without worrying about asking that kind of question that maybe I wouldn't want to ask my boss. One of those, I should probably know this, but I don't, and I don't want to embarrass myself by asking. We kind of created this as a place where everybody's kind of free to ask those questions without really, being afraid or being looked down upon. And again, I'm very proud of all the people who are involved in it. They've all done just a fantastic job, and really a site like that is about the members and not me. I really don't do a lot of the work there. I answer questions and things, but my job is to let all the members of the community answer the questions and make the posts and do that sort of thing. And we have hundreds and hundreds of members, and they've done a fantastic job.
I'm thinking about the different resources that the radio engineering community is fairly small as a profession, right? Although it's large enough where you can get help from other people. For those of us in the U.S., mostly from other engineers in the U.S., they would tend to know what our challenges are. But it is a worldwide community, and certainly people do participate from around the world. Let me ask Chris Tobin. Chris, in your engineering career, what have been some resources that you've been able to draw on? I certainly have been part of the whole broadcast.net listservs, and the I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. What's the other one that's so popular? The other listserv, the one that I subscribe to that I don't read much anymore. You guys jump in here and tell me I'm forgetting about it.
Broadcast one is what I was thinking. I'm not sure the other.
Is that Barry Michigan's list?
Yes, Barry Michigan's lists. Yes, exactly. So I guess a lot of folks who are roughly our age or so, that they probably subscribe to both. The broadcast.net ones, the BNet site was there first, I suppose, and then the Barry Michigan's listservs came along a bit later. And I subscribe to both, although they don't show up in my inbox. They automatically get filtered to some other folders. So I'm sorry, Chris, I interrupted the question I was asking you. And there's like the alternate frequency list, the broadcast list, the pub tech list. There's that, the radio tech list, the tech assist list. And man, I used to spend time reading these every single day, and I don't so much anymore. Chris Tobin, what's been a source of help for you?
Well, see, early on, it was just collecting manuals that were going out of print. That was one of my things I used to do. Believe it or not, collect manuals for stuff I may not even had or use, but you read some of those, the early ones, and you had some interesting stuff. And then I just scoured across the internet for various services, just do random searches for different topics and technologies, and find the services that list servers that are out there. Some of this stuff changes so much; it's like you just have to keep at it. That's how I've done it, because I just if I try to do something regimented with getting email alerts every day and stuff, I'd go crazy. There's just no way I can do that. So I just purposely, I go out. I pull rather than let them push to me. And I just go scouring all over the place. And keeping the basic stuff like Barry's site and then Chris's site. And there's a few others I've used over the years that I've kept in, And BNet was the biggie for a long time that everybody used. And then just ask around, talk to people. That's how I've done it, and it seems to work really well.
It's interesting to me, and I've had this discussion actually when I was with SBE on the board. We had that discussion about these email lists versus forums, like I have. And it's kind of odd because we're the only group I think left that still relies on email lists, and it just boggles my mind because, like you said, Kirk, with these emails, it's. After a while, you get so many of them, you don't really pay attention, or they go into a special folder that maybe you check once a month or whatever. And, I was trying to, for a long time, convince the SBE to move from their roundtable with emails to a forum-based system, because I just think, then you have the choice. If you want to get email, great. But if you want to go and just read, at your leisure and look at the website, it's there. And because that was the other thing kind of behind starting the forum was I just think email lists are, it's kind of like going out and buying a book when you've got a Kindle.
Good point. Yep.
Yeah. So Bob Holowenko in the chat room mentions that Google really is an engineer's best friend. And that's true in so many trades, so many professions, so many areas of specialty skill. As engineers, we take care of oftentimes everything from the copy machine to an STL antenna to an odd connector that our old AM transmitter has on it, and sometimes the only way to find these things. Just for fun, I just Googled Orban 8100 release time. Well, there's all kinds of stuff on there about Orban 8100 release time, including some discussions at broadcastengineering.info. How about that? So, Google has certainly been a big help to me. One thing I like about forums is the organization by topic that happens. It tends to occur, I guess, that because as the administrator, tell me how you do that. How do you decide what major topic items that you're going to have, and then do you depend upon the users to choose where their question or their comment is going to go?
Sure. Yeah. When I first put the site together, I kind of came up with those. And we actually just recently changed. We combined a couple, and I do rely on. We have a team of about 6 or 7 moderators who are kind of like helpers on the site. There's also the co-founder, which is one of my best friends, Kent Winrick, who worked with me to put the site together. So what we do is we have a little hidden form in it that you can't see unless you're in the administrator or the moderator group. And that's kind of where we all post messages to each other. And, so I did the original design, and now the rest of it's kind of by committee. It's kind of a natural thing where I let the moderators and the users kind of suggest what we do with the layout of the site and things. But as to your question, where do you post? What does it relate to? Generally, you can post wherever you want, and if it's really not on topic or if it's better suited for somewhere else, one of the moderators will come along and move it for you, and put it in a place where we think it's going to be better served. But generally, there's no strict rules. We don't really have any real hard guidelines on what you can and can't do. So it's a pretty open type of setup. Just pretty, if you don't know where to go, there's a general section there. Just poke to the general section, and if there's a more appropriate place, we'll certainly move it to where it needs to go.
I guess there's not an organized online site for learning about broadcast engineering. It's such a wide ranging topic field. Since we deal with so many different little areas of specialty, as I mentioned, from antennas to tube technology to digital technology, which that itself encompasses a whole wide range of things. I mean, I guess oftentimes I'm not overwhelmed, but I'm just amazed at all the different things that we as broadcast engineers have to have some expertise in order to be an effective engineer for our broadcast station. Chris Tarr and Chris Tobin, both of you have a good deal of expertise now and hands-on expertise in streaming. So, how did you get started learning about what to do to get your station's stream going? And I believe, Chris Tobin, when you were working at CBS, that was probably quite a different process than Chris Tarr working at Entercom because of the maybe different ways that those companies are run. Let me ask you, Chris Tobin, working with CBS, what was your introduction to streaming, and were you told what to do? Hey, this is the company we're going to deal with. Did you have some participation in that? How did you learn about getting this stream out to listeners in the best way?
Well, in the early days of the streaming process, we basically, at the time, all the business units, I'll call them as the terminology is, we were all independent. You had the corporate umbrella. At the time, there was no large group for streaming. So each radio station was left to its own devices. So the station I had worked with was the all-news station here in town. And we sat down, the program director, news director, and myself, and we said, okay, what technologies are available? What can we do? How do we do this? And we actually started off with a very simple setup. We worked with a company called, if I get this right, Limelight, right? Was it Limelight Networks?
Yes.
One of the early CDNs. And they, at the time, were doing Windows Media Streaming, which was the popular stream codec at the time, along with Real Networks. But for some reason, Real Networks was not as easily found as Windows Media, as we know. So we set up our own two little servers to set up primary and backup. We integrated our stream with our commercial delivery system. At the time, it was OMT, the Media Touch system. So they actually had their own custom Windows Media Encoder plug-in and front end, the whole bit. So we literally had their system talking to their encoder. So when we went to commercial break on the radio station, a software trigger would trigger the streaming machine, and its own commercials would play. So we did our own covering way before this became the big to do it is now. And on the stream, when you listen to it, it mimicked what the radio station did, but the commercials are different. So the experience was identical. And that was the mandate or the goal from the programming department. They said, we need to make sure that the person who listens on the radio and then tunes to the stream experiences the same thing, meaning whatever they got out of the radio station is what they get on both, which today, if you're lucky, you don't see that too much with too many streaming stations. But that was the original. So getting into that whole thing, I did a lot of reading. I went to a lot of the websites, especially Microsoft for Windows Media Streaming, then Real Networks, and I just started going all over the place, looking to find out what the best methods are and what to expect with low bandwidth, and how do you work with the CDNs and find out, there's edge servers, and you have ways of getting your stream content to different parts of the country so that when people connect, there's no latency. I should say no latency, but their connection is much easier than just connecting point to point and going across the country. So it was a good first year. We really stumbled and we learned a lot. We fine-tuned it and honed it in and made it work. It was flawless. I never even looked at the machines after we started doing it. We had it down to a science. And then as streaming and the internet became so popular among broadcasters, we moved from the individual radio station model to a more centralized, group of folks that were called the digital media group. And then their job was to take streams, integrate them, get commercials, do sales, advertising, and it just became a whole new world. And at that point, that's when myself and others were just brought out and said, okay, you just worry about the local box at your station, we'll do all the rest. And that's how it went. But yeah, my research in the beginning was literally reading every document I could find and talking to people, calling up. I mean, I called up websites that were streaming that were not even broadcasters. I just anybody who was doing streaming. I was like, let me see what this is about. What was it? 365 Live was out there, and there was a few others I just called up and talked to their techs. And remember, these folks in this industry, I'll call it the streaming, is all IT. It's not broadcast. So you're not talking to a broadcaster. You're not talking to somebody who's worked in radio or TV or anything or cable. These people are literally just, computer folks. And they've got a technology that can put audio into their box and make it into packets and send it out. And off it goes to the ether. And then anyone with the proper filtering device grabs it and listens. So, I'm calling up trying to ask questions that are sort of, as you and I and others would say, are, broadcast related. No clue. So I had to learn a whole new language, a whole new way of talking to people and understand, walk a mile in their shoes so that I could actually get their confidence and get something. It was interesting. It was quite a learning experience, which has paid off greatly.
I think it's fascinating that and I guess it makes sense. You started streaming as an experiment, just trying things out and seeing what worked for you. And eventually this coalesced and gelled into a corporate division at CBS. You said the digital.
Yeah. We got it working so well that they actually started mimicking some of our methods at the other stations. And we were like, they were like, how did you make it? The timing is so perfect where they break away and this and that. And, in part, I have to say it was the ease and use of the software from the folks at OMT, Media Touch. They thought it out much earlier than we did. And they said, yeah, you can do all this stuff. Here you go. And in the software, just little check boxes, the timing and how to break away and relay closures and trigger this and that. It worked great. I mean, it was flawless.
Cool.
That was the early days.
I'm reminded by Viddy in our chat room. Thanks, Viddy, for your participation. Viddy reminds us that back one of our early shows before we were actually on the TWiRT.tv network, episode number 18, TWiRT number 18, we had a show called How to Stream. And there's a whole lot of information still on the website. There are a lot of links to resources. You can get to that episode if you want to listen to it by going to the original website for the show, which is thisweekinradiotech, all spelled out, .com. thisweekinradiotech.com. And then just scroll to streams. Thanks, Viddy, for reminding us that exists out there. Now, Chris, let's contrast Chris Tobin's experience. Chris Tarr, how did you learn how to stream? And I'm asking this for a reason, so that folks out there who still aren't doing streaming or who kind of, like me, they're kind of foundering about just a bit and trying to learn how to do it better or provide this kind of service for my radio stations in maybe a better, more effective way than we're doing it now. What was your experience, Chris Tarr, from the early days?
Well, you know what? I actually, years ago, before streaming was very common. In fact, one of the very first pioneers in streaming audio back in, it would probably be the early 90s, I was involved with. And it actually involved sending the audio from a studio via ISDN to the distribution network, because at the time, all you could get is dial-up modems at home. So that's how far back I went. But a lot of this stuff, including streaming, I learned by just doing it. And even now I have, computers and servers in my basement that I try new things on and, try playing with things just to see how they work and seeing if I can break them. But even then I went from, the ISDN delivery to the stations where, I had actually a T1 to a provider, and, I had the radios feeding the sound cards that were, ran Windows Media Encoder and, all this kind of stuff. And so, that was probably 1999, 2000 when I started that. And then, as time went on, the software got more and more complex, and we started doing overlays and all these things. And then there came a point, just like Chris Tobin was saying a couple of years ago, when, we had a digital division and they kind of took all that over. So now my job is just essentially at least with my day job, is babysitting the boxes. Of course, I have clients as a contract engineer. Many of them are small stations, and I handle the streaming and the encoders and everything for them. So a lot like Chris, it's just kind of you get thrown in there, and it's sink or swim. And so I love to read and I love to research and I love to tinker. And for a while, a few years ago, there was a new piece of software out there for streaming. So what did I do? I set up a server, threw it in my studio in the basement, and start streaming for a week just to see what it would do, and learned quite a bit on how to set it up. Because it took me a couple of days to get it up and running the way I wanted to. And configured the way I wanted it configured, and I've made some mistakes and broke it and fixed it, but I learned a whole lot through that process of setting it up and getting it running. To now, when there's I have a client that has an issue, I can just remotely access their computer, a couple of keystrokes, and generally I can get them back in business.
Hey, this brings up a question about small broadcasters versus the big broadcasting companies like Entercom and your Clear Channel and CBS and others. Does a small broadcaster like my stations, I'm part owner of 7 stations or so in Mississippi and American Samoa. Do I have a chance with my small stations of having an online streaming presence that is anywhere near as smooth or impressive or works as well or on as many platforms as you big guys do?
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. There's no reason why you couldn't.
And I know there are providers. Well, we had a gentleman on a few episodes ago with Commotion.com. That they do some social things, but we're going to have Alan Hartle on at some point on our show, and we've had folks. I know you can subscribe to various services and plug your stuff in. There's a company called StreamOn. The guys there that I've been talking to about integrating some Omnia technology with their encoders. So I guess you can pay to have this done. And I interrupted you. Go ahead, Chris Tobin. You kind of started to jump in there first, and then Chris Starr. How could a small broadcaster look like a big guy in terms of online presence and streaming?
Well, the first thing I would suggest you do is, what is it you want to get out of the stream? What is it that you want the listener, the user, the people to experience? And then you work backwards from there. It can be done really simple. If you want to get into the whiz-bang, black magic, the black art of all those metrics that people tell you they can do, and commercial delivery, we can do all the targeted stuff, you can go in that direction. But if you're a small market, or no, I won't even say small, if you're a dominant market station and you know your audience and you're making money and you've got an audience share that works and everything is in order, then don't even focus on the metrics for the website of it. Create the experience. Get the word of mouth through the grassroots. Let the listeners, let the people that you direct to that website drive your the word of mouth. So merchants find out that the website works, but you don't need to go with these metrics and go crazy. Second or third, find a automation solution that works. If you may already be using a commercial delivery system, and then try not to do the fully integrated, whereas one box does everything. Make your streaming encoder a separate standalone box with its own database of music, or not music, commercials or promos or something that you can tailor to the streaming audience. Because remember, it's a different audience. And then find a CDN that is reasonable. And there's a lot of them out there. And remember, yes, the internet is global. Yes, the internet is national. Yes, it's regional. But the reality is your audience, what they're doing is local to you. And I'll give you an example. When I was traveling a couple of years ago, I actually traveled overseas and was vacationing in a place. I happened to be wearing a baseball cap at the radio station I worked for. And I was out in the sun relaxing. I was on the beach. And some gentleman and a woman come up to me and asked me if I worked at that radio station. I said, matter of fact, I do. I'm in Europe. Why would you even ask me that question? How do you even know anything about it? Turns out they're transplanted New Yorkers because of their jobs. And they were living in this part of the Europe. And I said, so we keep in touch with the stream. I said, really? Oh, yeah, that's how we keep in touch. We know what's going on. We go back home and we call family and blah, blah, blah. We haven't lost touch. So, if you're a radio station that's doing stuff and you're being sold a bill of goods about, you want to regionalize, you can get commercials that people in Belgium can hear. So what? That doesn't do you any good. The clients aren't going to like that.
Yeah.
Create an experience that the reason they're tuning into your stream is because they miss being home. And when you have that kind of loyal audience, those local merchants will know that the radio station via the stream has power. Here's a couple. Okay, Vienna, and we're talking to people who are keeping in touch with home, which means that they're listening to the stream. So what? I heard Bob's shoe store that's local to their old hometown. The point is, they're talking to family who are living in the audience sector of your stream. So now the commercials are exposing to somebody, maybe overseas, maybe wherever they are, outside your community, but they're still staying in touch with people in your community. Therefore, it reinforces what you're doing. Think about that. And that's where, now, can you put a metric on that? Can you say, here's a number that says those people in that part of the world heard it, and that's because of this stream, and the response is X? No. But what you do create is like an ecosystem. It's like, hey, people know when something happens in town, this is where they're going to go, this is where they tune in, and that's what it's about. And that's what the merchants, that's what an advertiser's buying into. And that's the reality. That's just like buying Apple products. Can you buy an MP3 player anywhere? Yeah. Absolutely. Is it the same as we'll call it the iPhone or an iPad or an iPod? Absolutely. Is the experience the same? Not even close. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference. And that's what you need to do. And that's what we had done. Matter of fact, what Chris was mentioning about back in the early 90s, I was actually working at a broadcast company, a very large one. We had a lot of programming that we were streaming and just throwing out there. Nobody knew what to do with it. And then working with a team of individuals, strictly all computer guys, they started developing a department, digital department. And so we could do this, we could do that, blah, blah, blah. Nobody wanted to hear of it. That's a fad. That's going to go on. That person and two other people went on to develop another company, then later sold that company. And the company they had was broadcast.com, a streaming company. Yes. I worked with the guys who were the garage guys who actually started that. They went off. They got dismissed by the company we worked for. They said, "Dad, go on, go about your business." They made a deal. They streamed the company's products and everything else. Went off and started a company. Got bought by Yahoo. Yeah, and that company that we all worked for, ABC.
And now, if you go to broadcast.com, it just takes you to yahoo.com.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But the thing was, I learned early on, as Chris pointed out, by just experimenting and talking and whatnot, that the streaming effect, yes, it's global, national, regional, a whole bit. That's not the key. It's just what is it you're trying to present? And whether the people are hearing it in Belgium or not, or France or Aruba, it doesn't matter. It creates an image, an ecosystem, and that's where you work. And if you have to find a way to pay for the extra bandwidth that's being pulled overseas, so be it, because you have transplanted people. That's going to keep the contact. That's where the value is. If you understand that and get it, that's the way to go. And if you're a small station launch, that works.
I'll take it one step further for smaller stations. It can be even easier. I mean, it can be crazy easy. Really the only the only thing you need to worry about for a small station is royalty payments. So you definitely want to have an automation playback system that can send title and artist information and aggregate that with your listeners to produce the stuff for the copyright board, for the royalty board. However, if you're a small station and you're not running any agency spots, you don't have to overlay anything. So that's right. You can run your local spots if you want. So let's say you're a small broadcaster.
I'm sorry, Chris. Say that again.
Yes.
Say that again.
If you are a small station and you're not running any agency spots, if you're just producing your own stuff in-house, there's no need to overlay commercials. The overlaying was for national commercials with the national voice artists who wanted to get paid for the royalties for international streaming. Right. If you're not running any of that, it's all your local stuff. There's no need to run these overlays. So you don't even have to get that fancy. All you need is something like SAM or even if you don't have an automation system, or IceCast or something like that will send just your title and artist data off to the aggregator or the CDN that's going to send this out. And it could be something as simple as an IceCast or a Shoutcast or something like that, where it's not this huge production to get the stream out. So you can it's all a matter of how deep you want to go in the rabbit hole. You can go all in and pick a provider that does MP3 streaming, AAC streaming, content overlays, special players, all kinds of stuff. Or you can roll your own and just get it done simply and pretty quickly and not real fancy. Just a simple click and listen to a stream. So there's many ways you can handle that, and it's just a matter of, like Chris said, what do you want the experience to be? What do you need the experience to be? Sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, we're not a big operation, we're certainly not going to get 8 billion people listening to us, but we do have people in the area who travel who'd like to bring the station with them. We'd like to have that opportunity to put our advertisers on a national scale, whatever. Then it maybe just be as simple as getting a very basic stream on.
Some folks in the chat room are talking about stations making their stream hard to listen to. Now, I don't think they meant low in volume, but I think they meant hard to get at, hard to find, or some stations you have to go to the website and click on a link and open a flash player that's customized for the radio station to hear the station.
CBS just started that. They've blocked all of their stations now, and you have to use their players. I used to listen, as a matter of fact, on my Roku using I think it was TuneIn to one of my favorite CBS stations in Chicago. It stopped working. Clear Channels has done that for a long time now for their iHeartRadio product. So, a lot of people are doing that now. And
on the one hand, let's mention iHeartRadio for a second. I think it's an interesting experiment, kind of a business model here. I guess I can't listen to the Clear Channel stations on my Roku box, but I have a new Wi-Fi streaming radio, and it has an iHeartRadio app on it. Now, when I'm playing it using the app, I'm not really paying attention to the ads. I guess I'm wondering why do I have to have an app to play a Clear Channel or one of their what's their business model? Why do they want me to use their app when I'm not paying attention to the appliance that it's running on anyway? It's not like there's some visual commercial advantage there.
First of all, I think between the three of us here and everyone on the internet, I think at some point just about everybody's going to be over on iHeartRadio. It's starting to get there slowly. I think and honestly, it's not the iHeartRadio product is actually a really good, solid product for radio. And granted, there's some like you were saying, there's some gimmies to that, but they really have done a good job marketing it, branding it, and adding bells and whistles. And the back end of that system is fantastic. They've done a fantastic job with the back end of their delivery system. So, I know if I'm not mistaken, they've got they had a deal now with Cumulus. They're moving to that.
Yep.
So I think there's a good chance that's where a lot of radio is going. And there's something to be said about that. I've been a big fan of TuneIn simply because everything is right there, and I agree with that. However, if radio is going to pick a platform that's going to be for broadcast radio, I don't mind if it's an iHeartRadio if everybody's there, because then that can really be geared towards the things that radio does well. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that's okay. Maybe, you can't use TuneIn on Roku, but once, that scales enough, maybe there is an iHeartRadio app for Roku and for these other players. So I think there's a little bit of a shift going on. And if we can all get there, I think that could be a good thing.
I don't know. I just don't like the idea of one company having access in that manner and doing it that way. I'd rather do it myself.
Yeah.
Well, we all kind of agree with that. On the other hand, the reality of that is that just it's not sustainable. Nobody's going to walk around.
Well, no, it's absolutely can be sustained if we just get out of our heads this crazy notion that we have to granulize the access to people down to a single IP address. It worked very well before we did it in the early days, and the response from people and the way it worked was great. The problem was we just didn't change our attitudes.
There's gonna have to be a single app for all this stuff. It's just gonna have to happen. I mean, otherwise people aren't going to walk around with 10 different radio station apps on their phone.
No, absolutely. There should be an open source app that we can all access, and it doesn't matter what you connect to. And I don't have to subscribe to something else.
There should be. Will that ever happen? Unfortunately, when you've got two of the biggest broadcasters on the planet committing to one platform, that's the reality. And if they're not on board, then you're going to have two apps. One for those who are on board with it, and one that isn't. And, honestly, having dealt with some of the iHeartRadio stuff, I don't know that it's as evil as some people make it out to be. I think it's Clear Channel again. I mean, they were looking for a digital platform to compete with the Pandora. And I think they're getting close to something like that with iHeartRadio. And I think that would it be great if it were independent division? Sure. Has anything ever worked in broadcasting that way? No.
No. This is true.
Hey, guys, we're going to take a break here for just a moment. When we come back, we're going to continue this part of the conversation. And Chris Tarr mentioned Pandora. Let that foreshadow for you what we're going to talk about after the break, but not maybe the way you're thinking of. I want to tell you that you are listening or watching This Week in Radio Tech, episode number 122 for March 28th, 2012. And I'm Kirk Harnack, along with Chris Tobin and Chris Tarr, our co-hosts on this show. It's kind of a free-for-all. We started out talking on this show about resources for broadcast engineers, and one of the ones that just keeps coming up over and over is Chris Tarr's site, broadcastengineering.info. So we want to encourage you to check that site out, sign up for it. Lots of forums there to talk about. But I want to mention the sponsor for our show, and that's my employer. So I know a little bit about the products there, and that's Telos. Telos Systems. Telos is now a company that is part of the Telos Alliance. Telos and Omnia and Axia, Linear Acoustic, all of these companies fall under the banner now of the Telos Alliance. If you want to go to the website, they actually do have a URL called telosalliance.com. And from there, you can go to all kinds of places. There's a tech blog you can go to there. You can sign up to receive a copy of the Now catalog, and you can go to any of the company's websites. Hey, I got something. Sorry, a little bit off mic here. Let me grab it behind me. You can sign up for our Now catalog, but we have a new Now catalog that's coming out. Here you are seeing the very first public preview. This is the Telos section of the Now catalog. Now the real ones will be bound. This is the pre-print edition. There are some articles in here which are just fabulous. Joe Talbot, expert on SIP telephony, has written an article, a couple articles in here. Also, one of our really intense R&D guys, Gintz Linus, from Latvia. Gintz has written a very in-depth article here. Also, Frank Foti in the Omnia section. Frank has a terrific article about this single sideband FM. So a lot of information in the new Now catalog. You can get yours by visiting the Telos booth at NAB, or you can sign up on the website, and guess we'll have them available in just a few weeks. Right after NAB, we'll be sending out a bunch of these Now catalogs. So what do I want to talk about with Telos? Well, just yesterday, I had a real pleasure. Got to go to Cleveland, Ohio, and meet with a whole bunch of Telos dealers and some customers, and met with a guy from Antigua, whichever way you want to say it, Antigua, in the Caribbean. He's putting in a Telos VX phone system. I'm so glad to see a small broadcaster on a relatively small island installing the world's foremost, most advanced phone system for multiple studios, multiple lines, and it works using SIP, or Session Initiation Protocol. Now, on Antigua, so far, he can't get SIP service, so he's going to be using a gateway made by a company called Patton to go from POTS lines and turn those into SIP so that his VX system can serve phone lines to several different studios there at his radio station, like 3 studios and 3 news workstations and a production room, too. So this guy, the engineer there, he sees the value. He's a contract engineer, actually, in Antigua. And he sees the value in using SIP telephony because it's so flexible. It's not like telephony has been, where you have, one pair of wires is one phone number, is one conversation. SIP is Ethernet, goes over Ethernet. And the Telos VX system makes that SIP useful in a broadcast sense for broadcasters, with just terrific telephone hybrids built into it, great Omnia audio processing built into it, and hey, there you go, there's a picture, and those gorgeous VSET phones to be used for call screening and to look at line status and to put callers on the air. Check it out on the web, if you will, the Telos VX phone system. Check out the white papers, too, on the website. And if you are at NAB, please come and listen to Joe Talbot's white paper. I believe it's being given on Monday. About 5 real-world situations, hands-on, how SIP telephony was installed at 5 different radio stations. Really interesting stories. So check it out. The website, telos-systems.com. And if you want to add a /VX to there, then you'll go right to the VX page. You can also go to the big landing page, telosalliance.com, if you want to do that. Thanks to Telos Systems for being the sponsor of This Week in Radio Tech. All right, back at it for episode 122. Chris, you mentioned Pandora, and a few weeks ago, actually a couple of months ago, I was talking to an engineer who we all know, and he was saying, you know, radio stations really, instead of fighting Pandora, we got to join right in with them. We ought to have Pandora, radio station channels on Pandora. Everybody knows how to get to Pandora. We ought to just be there. What do you guys think about that?
I completely disagree. They're two different. They're two completely different types of platforms. Pandora is a jukebox, and I also, by the way, always laugh when they call themselves radio, Pandora Radio. How are they radio other than that's like calling my iPod a radio? It does the same thing. It takes a bunch of songs, plays them. There's really nothing about there's nothing radio about it, and I think they serve completely different purposes. I think that Pandora is clever. It's interesting. I don't know that it's as huge as people like to make it out to be. I think it's kind of that dynamic where there's a very big core of real hardcore people who love them. But that was the same group of people who loved satellite radio and the same group of people who loved iPods and the same group of people that loved cassettes, as an alternative to radio. And the other reality of this is, at least for now, we can certainly thank the wireless carriers for that, but people are becoming more and more afraid to use Pandora out of the house because they're afraid of hitting their caps on their cell phones, their data caps, even though it's very difficult to do with Pandora. But people have become a little gun shy about turning Pandora on in their car and listening all day. And then we also get back to there's this mentality that we have to beat Pandora, that somehow it's we fight them, one of us dies, or we assimilate. I think we can both live symbiotically on the phone. I think they're two different types of entertainment options. I think when you're going, you'd be going to these applications for different reasons. So I guess I would be more inclined to combine radio stations on a radio app than I would be to put radio stations on a Pandora app.
Okay, now let me throw up one disagreement with you on that. On the notion that Pandora is a jukebox and radio is radio. Do people actually think of it that way? When I was filling in doing some weather at Fox 17, the morning weather guy sitting there with 8 weather computers. One of them was connected to the internet, and he would bring up the Pandora website, and he liked to listen some mornings to a Frank Sinatra channel. He used, maybe you could argue jukebox, but he wanted to hear the songs he wanted to hear. Why wouldn't he also want to use Pandora to hear the radio station that he wants to hear? Is it really that different?
I think it is, sure. And first of all, I've never heard anybody call Pandora radio other than Pandora. I think everybody just calls it Pandora. And again, I firmly believe that Pandora is the type of thing that replaces something like a satellite radio, where it's an augmentation to what you listen to on the radio. And I don't know that there's a good way that I can verbalize what that means, but there's a whole world of difference between listening to your local radio station and listening to Pandora. I mean, Pandora just makes it convenient to discover music. I think things like Spotify are going to hurt Pandora because they do the same thing, but you have a lot more control. In Spotify, you can create a radio station of just those sorts of songs, and you can manipulate them better than you can with a Pandora. So, I think they're two different things. I don't think you go to listen to Pandora like you would listen to the radio. I think if you're very interested in one specific, you're in the mood for one specific kind of song or one specific sort of artist, you go to Pandora. If you just want something to entertain you, you go to the radio.
In the chat room, it was asked, and I've wondered this too, why wouldn't you just want to be in several places? Why wouldn't you want to be on the receiver list of radio stations, or on our friend Greg Oganowski on the Streams Plus software, where your station just appears there, on iHeartRadio, on TuneIn Radio. Why wouldn't you want your station to be in all these places? When you sign up for iHeartRadio, are you barred from being in other places?
I actually don't know. I don't know enough about the platform to know that. I think there's a couple of reasons for that, and not all of them are good. Honestly, from what I can tell with some of the broadcasters, it is very much an effort to control the product, and I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. In fact, my stations were one of the first in our company to not make you sign up for the listener club to listen to the stream. That used to be the big thing. Get them to the website, force them to log in and be a member to get the email address to listen to the stream. And, we were the first to kind of break that mold. And I did have a discussion with a certain broadcast company that started to do that. And their explanation was simple, that, they were looking for a way to recover the money they spend on the digital product. They were looking for a way to control the advertising and the experience, possibly putting ads on the application, that sort of thing. And they lose that when you can just pick up a tune in and put it on there. So now, having said that, I agree. I would love, for the engineer part of me and the consumer part of me, would love to be able to have it any way I want it. That content, any way I want to get it, I should be able to get it. However, with that not being the reality, we got to look at, okay, what's the best way to do it then? Barring that, knowing that that's the best way to do it, that's just not going to happen until there's some epiphany in our industry where the bean counters go, you know what, this shouldn't be about every single dollar we can get out of it. Until that happens, and unfortunately, if you've looked at the economy lately and the way it's been hitting radio, I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. So now we look at, okay, that's not going to happen. We can wish for it all we want. So what do we do that at least is something that can be almost as good, or what would be an acceptable substitute to that? And I think that's the discussion we're having now.
I'm going to say something that I'll bet you Chris Tobin will agree with. So let's see if we do. I'm going to use an example here of the Nestle food company that makes those semi-sweet chocolate chip morsels. Nestle or whoever Nestle bought out, but let's say it was Nestle. Nestle they paid money for the recipe for Toll House cookies. Now, they could have sold that recipe. I mean, even back, whatever it was, 80 or 100 years ago, they could have sold that recipe for a nickel, a postcard. They could have run a promotion of some kind. Buy 2 bags, get the recipe. But they give the recipe away on every single bag of chocolate chip cookies. Right? Right. And there's other recipes out there for chocolate chip cookies, but I'm chocolate chip cookie connoisseurs. I know many of our listeners and viewers are. And there's not many cookies that I've found that are better than a Toll House cookie, one that you make at home. You don't quite finish baking it, it's still chewy in the middle, and it's just fabulously delicious. And they give the recipe away instead of charging for it when they paid for it. And I'm sure their bean counters at that company said, oh, we can't give it away. We've got to get our money back on this. Well, of course, they got their money back by selling chocolate chip cookies, which is what they do. So relate that to having to log in to be on a listener club, or go to a website, or open an iHeartRadio app, or whatever your company's app is, or be tied to a browser and a browser window that opens up that runs a flash player that lets you hear the radio station at the same time shows you banner ads and has a pre-roll that's got some paid for pre-roll, or it's got ads that are inserted that sound horrible compared to what the radio station normally airs. But aren't all these things just friction? Aren't all these things just impediments to listening to what you want to? Aren't all these things which would keep someone from trying it, jumping through the hoops, or going back to listen to the station? And what you want them to do is listen to your product.
Here's the problem, though. I don't disagree with you at all. However, there's more than one way to do that. You could open it up to everybody. That would be fantastic. It is just not going to happen for a whole number of reasons. Now, let's go back, and I'm using iHeartRadio. This could be any application. We'll use iHeartRadio because right now that's the one that's getting it done. They're signing deals all over the place. Somebody just mentioned on the latest Grace Radio, you've got Pandora and iHeartRadio built in. That's what's going to happen when radio standardizes on something. Because right now you've got Pandora, you've got TuneIn, you've got all these other different applications. And it's unfortunate but it's going to have to be either we all decide on one thing, or we do everything and everybody's going to do their own thing. I mean, that's the American way at this point. It's do whatever you want, do what works. There's no standard for this, and therefore everybody's doing their own thing. So, I don't care if it's iHeartRadio or if it's TuneIn or whatever, but broadcasters have got to get together and get on one platform, because that's when you can do the deals with Roku and Grace and all these other devices to say, hey, you build this application or you build this little portion of code into your system, and you're going to get all radio will be able to be able to play any streaming station on your device. That makes sense.
Okay, our friend from Australia, Hit Nation Dan, in the chat room says streaming equals AM stereo all over again.
It is. It's like we're trying to let the market decide, and the market just isn't going to. And so somebody's going to have to do something. And again, a lot of people bash Clear Channel and the iHeartRadio thing, but I give them a lot of credit. I may not agree with everything they do. We may not, and there may be some things there that we don't like. However, what they did is they came up with a platform that works, that's stable. They promoted it. They did a lot of work with it. They've made deals with distribution networks in terms of devices, and it's happening. And they're doing a very good job with it. And unfortunately, not everybody, it wasn't a collaboration, so they kind of were able to get the first in and win type of thing. But that's exactly what somebody needed to do in the broadcast industry.
So, and I got a feeling Chris Tobin wants to get a word in edgewise here, but you keep mentioning iHeartRadio, and I haven't played with it a whole lot, but if you go to iHeartRadio.com, you get redirected to iHeart.com, and you can find a live radio station, or you can create a custom station. So this is Clear Channel letting you to create a custom station. It seems to it knows your location. The first thing that pops me up here are stations in Nashville, Tennessee, The Rock, 107.5 The River, Big 98 WSIX, 101.1 The Beat, and News Radio 1510 WLAC. So there's localism built in right there, I know that Cumulus, and I believe somebody else, I don't remember if it's Saga or who else, but has made an agreement with iHeartRadio to be on there too. So, Chris, you think iHeartRadio at the moment is looking like the favorite horse in this race, and radio stations ought to glom onto it and let it do its magic. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I'm not. I'm saying iHeartRadio because right now that's what's going on. There could be something completely different in the works that I don't know about. But yes, we need to pick one thing and go with it as a group, because otherwise, somebody else had mentioned, well, you're just saying just give in and let it happen. Well, here's what's going to happen is there's going to be one front runner, and as time goes on, it becomes a kind of a self-fulfilling thing where the more people that get out of this platform, the more desirable it becomes to the end user, and those who aren't on it are being left out. And I think at some point it's going to be inevitable. And again, I could think of a worse platform to be on. I don't know that particular platform is bad. Could it be better? Sure. Could we come up with something better? I'd love to. I'd love to create a company that's what they do. But at this point, until there's another alternative, that's it.
Of course, there's room for competition. And Chris Tobin, I was going to bring up back to my point earlier, and somebody in the chat room mentioned, Leo Laporte says the new model is give it away. You'll make money in the long run. What do you think about that? And what comment were you going to add earlier, Chris?
Oh, that's me. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Chris Tobin.
Well, I definitely agree with Leo's approach. I have seen that work in many other industries. It works very well. The trick is to understand the long term and short and long term how you recoup your investment. I can say that I've worked with several broadcast companies, they'll all remain nameless, where in the early days when we did not force the listeners to log in, sign their names, give emails and that sort, we actually had the best experience and some of the best revenue capabilities in those days. When we started switching to models like you see now today, I have heard and watched the revenues shift to suddenly dropping below where they want them to be. Their inability to create, market's down 3% this quarter. We're going to try and be 5% up. It's like, yeah, things aren't happening like that anymore. And anybody who manages money would know you're an idiot for even trying that approach. And I've noticed that the more we get into this, I call it the velvet rope garden approach. iHeartRadio could be one of them. Pandora and many others. I think we're going to lose sight of what the real deal is. The listeners, the audience, whether it be TV, radio, have a certain expectation, certain experience. And as much as I know, and Chris is right, iHeartRadio is definitely out the gate doing their part to try and bring something to a commonality or a common platform. And I have to assume as a business model that there's more going on in iHeartRadio than we're led to believe at the moment. The bigger picture hasn't really been unfolded. Because I remember reading, and I heard it from somewhere, that if you as you're Cumulus or Bonneville or whomever, and you subscribe to iHeartRadio, there are some restrictions that are put in place that you can't do because now you're part of this conglomerate. So there are some interesting things when you read the details. I still think if Clear Channel, we'll use them as an example because they're out the gate first. This would be the same if this was 5 years ago as XM radio for satellite. I really believe if they wanted to do something good, if you want to call it that, altruism, they should have gotten together with the other broadcasters and used the NAB as a non-biased approach and say, look, guys, we need to come to an agreement. Let's work on something, whether it be the model that iHeartRadio is today, but there's no reason why they couldn't come together. And I think that as Chris points out, today's an atmosphere in the economy. You know what? Tomorrow the economy can be great and everybody's making money hand over fist. I guarantee you nothing would change. Nobody would be interested in doing anything different the way it is.
I think, and I don't want to. I mean, I don't want to sound like a Clear Channel defender. I think the way that iHeartRadio developed was it was never really meant to be the platform. I believe it was developed for their platform, and I think it was there for their platform. Absolutely. And I think what happened was it works, and it works pretty well. And they went, this might be a way to, yes, okay, it wasn't altruistic. There were financial things involved, but I think it started out with something that was for them that worked, and they went, hey, we've got something here. Maybe we could be the distribution content that has yet to be, or the distribution provider that has yet to be created. And that's why they came out of the gate that way. Now, I agree with you completely. It would have been great if it were a joint effort. However, again, I go back to somebody's got to lead. And if it's not Clear Channel, then it needs to be somebody else who can rally the troops and get it done, because you just don't see a lot of that meeting at the NAB with everybody coming up with something that everybody's going to agree on and that's going to work. So it may have to be somebody even independent of the broadcasting company to do it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I was thinking, in a utopian world, an organization like the NAB would have done this already, and they would just hire the best programmers and to save the radio industry from itself. And but the last thing that the NAB gave us that was really useful was, let's see, the CART and the Broadcaster's Creed.
That would be correct.
Right. Exactly.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be so negative. Hey, our good buddy Skip Peasy is working at is he working at NAB or FCC now? Oh gosh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'll have to.
I thought he was at NAB.
Yeah, okay, he's at NAB. He's at NAB. We got to have Skip back on and give him some trouble over this and see what they've got up their sleeve for helping the radio guys. We're at episode 122 right now. By the time we're up to episode, let me do some math here real quick. About 320, 350. By the time we're up to episodes in the 300s, most of the new cars sold are going to come with a dash display that will have iHeartRadio built in. You'll have your 4G WiMAX, LTE, whatever, built in your car, or you'll buy a little SIM card for it and pay a monthly fee for all the data that you should be consuming in your car. You'll be streaming Netflix or whoever their successor will be in the back seat. You'll have traffic and all that, and you'll have 20,000 radio stations to choose from. The problem then is going to be the GUI to figure out how to slim it down to what you want to hear. Do you want to hear your Pandora favorites? That'll be on there, I'm sure. Your iHeartRadio favorites will be on there. If you just want to hear your local stations, I hope you'll be able to find those quickly and easily by frequency or call letter or logo. We're going to be talking that'll be a reality in a couple hundred shows from now, don't you think?
I think it's inevitable. I think and again, I'm getting beat up here a little bit on the IRC because it sounds like I'm an iHeartRadio buff. I'm really not. What I am a buff of is what you're saying, is that utopia where there's one app to rule them all. And I think until there's somebody that comes out, the problem with the apps that we've had so far is that they benefit the creator in some form or another. Be it iHeartRadio for the traffic, tune in for the profits. It's really going to have to be somebody who, sort of similar to an open source project, who can deliver this thing and say, this is for you guys. I don't get anything out of this other than, bringing you guys all together. And I think that'll happen. And I think that's when all of a sudden the reality you're talking about will be there, when you can buy a radio and it will do everything. Pandora, it will do iHeartRadio, it'll do CBS, it'll do whatever you want to throw at it. I think it'll come.
I got to tell you something funny. We went on vacation last week, and we left the house, and we every couple of weeks we have a cleaning service come in and do a little fix up cleanup, because both me and Laura work, so I always leave this radio, this Wi-Fi streaming radio that I got is on the buffet at the front door. And I always leave it to some station that's streaming environmental music. It's all very relaxing. You walk in the front door and it's kind of relaxing, kind of nice. And just leave it on at low level there all the time. Well, we got back from vacation, and the cleaning service had been at the house while we were on vacation. And those cleaning ladies, they found a mariachi station and they left it on. So we opened the door from vacation, came home, and what do we hear in the front living room? Arriba! I thought, well, I guess the cleaning service was here. I think it was hilarious.
Nice. That's awesome.
That's one way to keep tabs on them.
Yeah.
And part of me bringing that up is that, I assume I'm a broadcast engineer. I know all about such things as Wi-Fi radios, and I can manipulate the knobs and find what I want to immediately. I'm sure those ladies had no trouble. I'm not sure. Well, I don't think they're highly educated. And they had no trouble finding a station that they wanted to listen to.
But I think that's a rarity. I do. I think something happened there where they got I like to call it the mom test. My mom has a computer. She's pretty good at using it. But if I were to put a radio in front of her, some of the digital radios that I've seen, there's no way she'll be able to find something. But she won't be able to say, this is what I want, go to this thing and find it. And I think we still have a ways to go with that.
Well, you're probably right. Guys, we got to zip on out of here. Thanks for this informative discussion and a lot of fun. Thank you, chat room, for being with us, too. In the chat room, KC0DGY says, my Grace radio took hours to get all programmed up. How about simple? And mine is what is mine? It's a Grace radio, and I didn't think it was easy to set up at all. It took a lot of fiddling to find some things that I wanted. So maybe it was an accidental thing, like you said, Christar, and then maybe they're geniuses and I'm not so smart. Our program today has been brought to you by Telos Systems and the Telos VX multi-studio, multi-line SIP phone system. Check it out on the web at telos-systems.com. Please come visit us at the NAB. We'll be very glad to host you in our booth and chat with you and give you a catalog and show you whatever you want to see there in the booth. Chris Tarr with Entercom in Milwaukee. Thank you very much for being with us. And Chris Tarr, owner of the Virtual Engineer website, which can be found where?
Broadcastengineering.info.
Go there. I know you've had a bunch of signups during the show here.
I have, actually. I've been trying to get to them as they come in.
You hide the keyboard well, my friend. And let's see. Bob Holowenko asked, can we mention for people to post on the NAB 2012 comment on the TWiRT Facebook page? So if you're on Facebook, go to the TWiRT page on Facebook and comment on the on NAB 2012. I think we're trying to do some kind of a meetup there, and thank you all for taking care of that, because I haven't even looked at that yet, so I apologize for not being involved in that yet. Chris Tobin from New York City, thank you for being with us also. Appreciate you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime. Hey, do we have a plan for TWiRT at NAB or no?
We do, actually. We're going to be on the air from the TWiT stage on Wednesday, but it will be in the morning. I'm not sure the exact start time. I'm thinking it's a 2-hour show that starts at 9 a.m. Pacific time, but I could be wrong about that. It goes from 9 to 11, I believe. So
Oh wow! Okay,
it'll be a humdinger. We need to arrange some guests. We need to arrange that guest who thinks that all radio stations ought to be on Pandora. He'll have something to say. Should we keep?
Most certainly.
We'll have to keep him separated from Chris. All right, guys. Thanks very much for being with us. Thank you, Burke, for switching the show back there. And we need a show title. Somebody said, "Chewy in the Middle." Like it? Yes? No? I kind of like it.
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
First for me.
All right. Chewy in the Middle. All right, we'll do that. Thanks a lot, guys. We're going to see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.